He was a 4-year letterman and team captain, earning accolades both on and off the field. In addition to his time at Memphis, his professional journey has taken him to key positions at K-State, University of Texas, and University of Florida, where he continued to build a thriving athletic program and champion student success. Mr. Veitch returns to Mizzou during a period of remarkable achievement and momentum. Just look at our stadium and all the changes that's happening there. Under his guidance, Mizzou fans everywhere are excited to see where he takes the university's athletic programs next. So please join me in welcoming Blair.
Y'all hear me okay? Am I on speaker or not? Yes? Am I? Okay. All right, good. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Kelly, thank you. Where is she slipped out. Oh, there she is. Thank you for reaching out for coordinating. I also want to thank MEM. They have been good sponsors of Mizzou Athletics for years. In fact, when I was here previously in my role many, many years ago with Learfield Sports, I was a general manager. I worked with them at that time. Although I know there's many other of you, I'm assuming this is not right. This is probably several different companies represented in the room. And many of you probably are with partners of Mizzou Athletics. So I won't, try to list everybody. I'll do the politically correct thing, just thank the hosts. But I'm sure I start like an arm wrestling match to determine who's the best partner, who influenced the KU victory the most, that kind of thing. But we do appreciate all the partnerships and how we're supported so broadly, particularly in y'all's world. I wanted to talk today about leading through change, and the reason I selected that, I'll be very candid with you, is because it was a talk that I'd already prepared for another group. So, and no offense, I was being fully transparent here. I didn't prepare this specifically for you, but I did just prepare it here a few weeks ago. So, a group from campus, actually from the University of Missouri system, calls in leaders across the system, and they asked me to specifically speak to that topic. And then when Kelly reached out to me, I was thinking about it based on kind of what you were talking about with resiliency and so many other things. It seemed to align well. So I thought I would translate that here. I am happy to answer questions just about the craziness of college athletics or how awesome Mizzou is right now, whatever you want to talk about at the end. So we can open it up for a little dialogue. I don't know, how are we doing on time? What do we have from a time standpoint? Do you have an hour? Oh, okay. All right, great. I hopefully will not take that long, but if you want to keep me for an hour, I have an hour as well. So, for those of you that don't know, I will talk just a little bit about college athletics, because if you're not following it closely, it does pertain to the talk. And managing change, I think in many ways would sort of define my role for the last several years, not just here at Mizzou, but college athletics is going through a massive change. We are evolving in ways that we have not evolved with literally ever in decades. I mean, it is going through a significant movement, most of which not really brought on by ourselves. So I became first head athletic director at the University of Memphis before this job in 2019. And what happened in 2020 with COVID, and of course that was some rapid change for everybody. And then shortly after that, the NCAA power conferences began losing lawsuits, is essentially what happened. So we, being college athletics, sort of resisted this idea of evolving past amateurism and really compensating student athletes directly beyond scholarships. So we resisted that for years, and then ultimately began losing lawsuits, and then lost control of that argument and the ability to cover it. So what has happened is you've heard about NIL, right? And paying student athletes, the onset of collectives, all those things, along with transfer portal and student athletes transferring from place to place. Well, both of those are results not really of our own, decisions. They were a result of lost lawsuits and kind of reacting. And when you're in an environment like that, when things are changing because of forces beyond your control, which I can imagine in your world they do quite often, it can be really, really difficult, and change can happen very rapidly. So that has been my world, and managing that change, kind of leading groups through that change, really for for the duration since then. So I became athletic director here about a year and a half ago, really entering into my, for really second kind of competitive or academic cycle. And I will tell you, if you're going to manage change like this, it's awesome to do it at a place like Mizzou because we have really good things going. We have wonderful coaches, really good support, great leadership, genuinely, not just because they're my bosses, but the President Choi, and our curators are very supportive of athletics and really recognizing this challenging time we're in. And that's created a platform to really try to use this change as an opportunity to ascend, which I think in many ways we're doing competitively and in other metrics as well. So that's the backdrop. There was a few areas that the prior group asked me to speak to. So I kind of have these just sort of broken down into what I would call kind of my common sense, sort of sensible ways to lead and manage through change. The first ones I asked you to speak to maintaining team cohesion during challenging periods. Anybody relate to that? It's like trying to keep a team together of people during change and maybe some frustration. So here are the things that I came up with. I would first start with your team makeup first. So one of the things that I'm sure many leaders encounter when they first jump into a new role, particularly at a new place, is you inherit a team. So it is really important that you can trust your team. So who you start with, I don't care how good a leader you are, how good a manager you are, if that core group around you isn't somebody you trust and that are very capable, then that has to be addressed. And that may sound candid or overly direct, but I think that's critical. Now, fortunately, here I have an unbelievable staff. I literally have the best staff I've ever worked with. And I'm, again, not just saying that. I have a really, really good leadership team, about half of which I brought with me, about half of which was already here, and we've come together to form a really good group. But I would tell you that having the right people, it's kind of the old, having the right people on the bus is step number one. I also think it's really important as a leader to articulate clearly your values and what your expectations are from the beginning. I will tell you, when I first came here, I talked, my number one word was trust. And I really laid that out with our team, not as a more of a threatening manner, but as the value of trust. If, anybody read The Speed of Trust, that book, there's this book, I highly, highly recommend it, because it changes your perspective of trust. And it really it makes it clear that trust is a true commodity. And if you don't have trust, you just think about operating in an environment of trust versus operating in an environment with lack of trust, and how much faster, quicker, easier, smoother, more efficient you are when you trust those around you. And if you don't, how incredibly painful and difficult it is to get things done and to operate. So I really drove that home, but it's just an example. I think that's, the first thing to do is lay out, what your values are. And also providing clarity and responsibilities. One of the other things I found with staff, with people that I work with, giving, really clear priorities and direction of what, not necessarily expectation, but what are they responsible for? How do they define success? And if you have to live at a job where it's not really outlined for you what success looks like, what your clear, handful of top priorities are, it's really difficult, right? It's really difficult to find success. So it's difficult to have cohesion. I also believe strongly in real structured, intentional communications. I think by providing communications in a really structured environment, it very much helps maintain cohesion. Because it's the other thing. You jump into a new role, you start asking around people, what are our challenges? And invariably, no matter every job I've ever been around, communication's number one, right? Every single one. Well, we could sure communicate a lot better, right? And so that takes intentionality, thought. That's why the old, weekly staff meetings are important, whether people like them or not. But it's also really important to kind of keep an eye out for gaps. So recently, we had one of our really strong leaders, his name's Will Kaba, he's on our leadership team, diagnosed over the last year that we had a kind of a gap within our department. We were doing a really good job with our leadership team and with our head coaches, but not everything was filtering kind of the call it the middle management in our role, assistant coaches, operations directors, people that are actually doing things. So he started a monthly meeting, which again sounds like, basic communication 101, but he's doing it more tailored to that group. And we've already noticed after just a few meetings how much more valuable that is and how many things that are surfacing that we're able to address and answer by being really intentional and thoughtful with that communication and how he manages. I also believe strongly in addressing issues and conflicts directly and quickly. So one of the other things that I found is that particularly in any working environment, even if you have good people that care about each other, have good intentions, we all get our feelings hurt, right? And typically what I've found is that it's because something's bubbling under the surface that's not been addressed directly. So I talked to our team a lot about, hey, if there's tension, run to that tension. Don't avoid the tension. Don't avoid conflict. Obviously, there's a responsible, professional way to do that, to build trust instead of to create separation and more challenge. But, running the problems is important. And I also, the last thing I would say is believe heavily in no drama. So those kind of thing came in when I first jumped into our athletic department, not here, but at the previous place I was in. It was a place that frankly, it just lived on drama. It was like one of those places where whoever was chirping the loudest got the most attention and got things done. So it just fed on itself and it created this environment. So I had to immediately, no drama. And what I found is if calm leadership, when you are, that kind of calm ship in the storm and things are coming at you from different directions and you basically just ignore the drama and you don't feed into it, it really helps, create more cohesion, calming the waters of those around. So that's it for team cohesion. Any questions, thoughts, comments on that?
I do. So when you came in and you said you had about half the staff you brought with you, about half you had here at Mizzou, did you select the staff that you kept here at Mizzou, or if you did, how'd you figure out that fast who you wanted to keep?
Yeah, it's challenging. I will say that I had the misfortune, challenge, whatever you want, that there was some folks that left, right, with the prior athletic director, and that created some openings and some movement. That space allowed me to kind of reset some things. There's also a pretty, fast assessment, particularly those leadership groups. I'm not one that's going to come in and fire a lot of people, but if there is, really, really key positions, then I got to try to assess pretty quick. Are they competent and are they trustworthy? And, that I really dig in with them, right? Spend a lot of time, understand how they're wired, what they're doing. To me, I give it a couple, 3 months. And then after that, I kind of feel like I know. And typically in most of the jobs, there's maybe a couple, 3 changes you got to make. It's not, broad if it all being, hopefully. But sometimes I think that is necessary, and it's a difficult thing. So the worst part about leadership is making those kind of decisions. But I have found it is critical, because if you can't trust those people and they aren't competent, you just almost can't get the plane off the ground.
So quick follow-up question on that. So if you had to estimate, because you're trying to make new business plans, you're trying to get the feel of Mizzou, of course you have some background there. How much percentage of your time are you spending trying to get to those new people versus trying to get everything else started?
Early on, I think it is job number one. I shouldn't say job number one. Job number one is developing key relationships with the people that are there around you. But job number two is getting that leadership team in place. Because like I said, it's everything to me. If I don't have that group around me that is really good, I know I'm not going to be successful, because I need them to lead and manage their efforts. So I spent a lot of time. The first year in these jobs is just like every job. It's hard, but and this I found in this kind of athletic director type role is really challenging. It's just like all in, for those really first 6 to 9 months or so. And a lot of that is getting that team established and in place, hire, that whole thing.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right. So the next area was they asked me to speak to is aligning diverse interests toward common goals. So we have a lot of different people with a lot of different interests and priorities. And I will tell you, we have 20 sports with, actually there's only about 15 head coaches because a lot of those kind of fall in the track umbrella of those 20 with one head coach. But 15 different head coaches at the SEC level. You can imagine that there's some very driven, very kind of high ego, right, in a healthy way, very competitive individuals that are demanding attention and resources and time, as they should, right? And I tell our people all the time, I want them to, right? I want them to push us, but it can be challenging. The things that came to mind when I was asked to speak to that somewhat kind of relate to providing clarity and values, but I think providing clarity in goals and what our priorities are, and really agreement in those core items is critical from the beginning. It's kind of like establishing values. You establish clear goals, and there's not 20 of them. There's a handful that we're all kind of working towards. That's a place to start. I also have found, at least particularly in our world, that transparency really builds trust and makes way for that alignment. So for whatever reason, college athletics tends to be this area where, people don't want to share information. It's very public in nature. Things get reported. You're always very cautious. And so because of that, a lot of times, like even athletic department staffs won't really even know, like, what's our budget really look like? Not just like my area, but what's our overall budget and how does it make up, and where's it coming from and where's it going to? And I found that each place I've started or been around, when we lay all that out and really show people how they impact the whole and create that level of transparency. Now, it's difficult to start because there's all kinds of like misconceptions or, prior things that have been communicated or thought. So you got to really be clear and manage that well. But we've done that here and done it other places. And what that does is suddenly by just being transparent with that or other issues that are in the department, it creates trust and it kind of makes the way for people to be aligned. So if you don't start with transparency, I think it gets really difficult to maintain alignment over time. I also think once you've done that, it creates a path to provide visible accountability. So if you are in an area where you have salespeople or staff that have certain metrics or goals, that, when you're transparent about everything goes to the bottom line, it also makes it really, really clear, right, how their performance hits the full total goal of the team, and therefore kind of creates alignment. So that's just an example. And finally, I would say the other thing that I think really helps keep kind of alignment towards common goals is if, your leadership and that, would certainly be like my role or our senior leadership team and even head coaches, if they are truly more low ego and they don't make it about themselves, I also think that really helps broaden that sort of collective alignment towards common goals. Because, if you're coming out as a, high ego, very, central focus, self-centered focus type of leader, people tend to think it's about you and you're trying to make it about you instead of making it about the team. So I have found that's really helpful, that if you are really just trying to be in the background, I lead out front where I need to, where I should, but ultimately to me, like in our world, it's really easy because head coaches and student athletes are the ones that should be out front, right? It's not about, you're not going to see me like taking credit for victories and wins. I'll be happy. I'll be celebrating, right? But it's not about me. And when you continue to take that approach, I think it helps a lot with that. Those common goals by it. And the other, it's sort of related to that. They asked me to speak to gaining buy-in from various constituencies. So as you might imagine, in this role, we got a lot of constituencies. We got, student athletes, parents, coaches, staff, fans, politicians, media. Could probably, keep the list going. It's pretty broad, right? If you think of a constituency group in our world, because it is so public, there's a lot of groups to work with and try to keep alignment. And try to get buy-in from. that the first thing that I have noticed, and this is where, for those of you that don't know our president, Boo Choi, he's fantastic, genuinely. I'm not saying he's my boss. Like he's really, really good. And one of the things that I've noticed, he is visible everywhere. So if you're around our university, around campus, I have heard when I first got here how kind of well-liked and respected he was. And one of the first things that I picked up on is if there is an event, if there is a time when he can attend something and be there, he's there. And that goes, that like, call it political capital, relational capital, whatever you want to call it, he builds up because he's so visible in his role and aware and out there. People, they feel like he's aware of what's going on, right? And they feel like he cares. He's aware and he cares. And so much of that is just showing up and being there. And that's one of the things I have found more and more, particularly in these kind of leadership roles. It's really difficult to prioritize some of those things, and it's real easy to sort of push them aside. You got a meeting with the attorneys or, other things you feel like you need to do, but showing up and, visiting the band or, meeting, I meet with all of our sports when I start the year, and I go around to different events, and I try to be visible because particularly with young people, I have found when you're visible, they think you're aware and you care, and it really, really goes a long ways. Over communicate, I guess that's probably fairly obvious, but that means good and bad. And it goes back to that point about, meeting challenges directly is, the more you avoid it and the longer you put it off, the more difficult it becomes. So over communicate, and then finally, I would say, I think it's really important. I found this more and more with young staff as well. They want to know how they impact the greater good, right? They want to know what their efforts every day, how it aligns, how it impacts what we're doing. So that's why it's important to start from the beginning. Here are our goals, here are our values, here's our priorities, here's how we impact, kind of what's the why behind what we do. But it's also, I think that becomes fairly obvious. But I think it's also really important to show them how success for the team comes back and benefits them. And maybe they don't talk about that and ask it as much, but it's there. So if you're not getting to that part of it and being able to articulate that to them, I think you're not getting out of them what you can in terms of performance. Because when they start to see not only the why of how they align with the greater impact, we talk all the time about, hey, for us, it's not just winning ball games, right? We are changing lives, providing opportunities, educating young people, and we're also literally like uniting a state, right? In so many ways, what we do is probably the most visible thing that statewide really happens for Mizzou. We impact our brand, we unite the people, and we talk a lot about going into this last Saturday how for many people that was like a family reunion, right? Now that we had a chance to host this 60,000 people that were just as excited and happy to be together as they've been in a long time about a lot of things. And that's a responsibility we take, seriously. So talking about how that bigger vision works, but then also talking about when we have success, how that impacts them, not only the joy of the job, but how it positions them. In our world, it is a competitive environment where you're trying to get responsibility, learn things, move up. And when we have success, it can impact people directly. You can get really micro and in specifics with that. All right. So those are, hopefully that was something. It seemed like it was, maybe aligned with kind of the things you're talking about and working on. And I'd be happy to, let's stop there. Just if I can answer any other questions or if there's thoughts from the group.